the faith have experienced what is called the dark night of the soul. This, simply put, is a time when suddenly the faith simply doesn't make sense to you anymore. When you lose your grip on God and you feel totally removed from God. When your soul falls into despair and you honestly feel so alone that you can't imagine any other human being in history has ever felt as alone as you feel. And throughout all this, your thoughts twist and turn and try to make sense of it all. You try to make sense of the existence of life, of the world, of God, of your place and everything, but nothing comes. Nothing but alienation, pain, despair, and an incredible longing for meaning that nothing seems to satisfy. You cry out, but there's no answer. Only the echo of your own painful voice. A voice that has nothing to say. And eventually you give up. You stop trying. You stop trying to make it all make sense. You stop trying to believe or to disbelieve because you are so tired. You simply can't try anymore. Now, it might surprise you to hear a pastor say that he went through something like this. I get that kind of response rather often. The conversation with a person might go like this: "Oh, pastor, I have doubts." And I'll say, "Well, I've had doubts, I have doubts." And they'll say, "But you're a pastor!" No, I'm sorry. Religious professionals are just like you. They just happen to practice their religion professionally. I am paid, in a sense, to be a Christian. But otherwise, we are just as flawed, just as human, just as sometimes silly, sometimes angry, and sometimes as devoid of faith as someone going through their own dark night. Now, I was not a pastor when I went through this. I was a young man. I was studying English and religious studies, and I had grown up supremely confident in my faith and in my intellect. In the foolishness of my youth, I tended to view the universe as a puzzle. A puzzle that, if I applied myself a little, I could certainly solve. I was wrong. I was really wrong. And when I encountered life at its fullest, with all its twists and turns and all of the things that simply cannot be explained, I crashed and burned. And it was bad. It was really bad. It was so bad I could not even articulate what was going on inside of me. So I went through the motions. I kind of reached into my bag of tricks. I used the skills I have as an actor, and I pretended everything was okay, and I think pretty much everybody thought everything was okay. But it was not okay. My very soul was in despair. So I did a few things. First off, I shut up. I shut my mouth. And I just experienced things around me. I listened to my friends have their conversations. I watched the interactions of my coworkers in my summer job. And I mostly said nothing, just enough so that they would think I was okay. Next, I stopped trying to figure out God in the universe. Basically, I threw up my hands and I said, "You win. Okay, God, if you're even out there, I've stopped, because I'm never going to understand." And then I held on to a few small rays of hope. The first is in this song. Show that. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path that sinners tread, or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. Like trees planted by streams of water. I took this thought and I coupled it with the thought of a prayer by St. Augustine, who prayed not for understanding, but rather for faith, so that he might come to understand. I took these things and I clung to another simple hope. The simple hope that I knew there were people out there smarter than me who still had faith. And I took all of these and I used them to try to stay planted. To stay by that stream of worship and faith, even though I really didn't have any faith at this point, even though prayer at this point was completely impossible for me. And yeah, it came back. When I stopped trying, my faith returned. When I stopped trying to call the shots, my understanding of God's presence in my life came back to me. When I, in a sense, stopped trying to act like God, God was revealed. It wasn't all of a sudden. And when it happened, I was different. I was changed. I was much more understanding, a lot less judgmental, much more accepting of ideas, truly humbled. And I'd like to think more loving, because I had experienced what it felt like to not feel love at all. And then to have that feeling of being loved restored. This was probably the most important thing that ever happened to me. This kind of made me who I am. It gave me, in the end, a strength. A strength that I hope has allowed me to live out my life in faith. My message today is pretty simple. First, it's always good to ask the questions of your heart, to apply your intellect. Let God have your questions. God has no problem with your questions. But never ever think you're going to get all the answers. Bulletin, folks, nobody gets all the answers. And people who think they have all the answers have simply succeeded in self-delusion. Next, when you have questions, remember, there's probably a lot of people out there who are smarter than you who still have faith. Great scientists, theologians, artists, and so on, who have no problem recognizing God and who in fact feel the need to call on God every day. And if you enter a time when you are confused, or if you encounter your own dark night, relax. Give it time. Breathe. Just keep breathing, and eventually the answers will come. And finally, stay planted. Just stay planted by that stream of water that comes from God, and just be. Get to worship. Come to communion. Give yourself over to God and let God do God's thing, and God will. Stay planted, and God will give you nourishment. And your soul will prosper.